We'd like to warmly welcome everyone to this Microsoft 365 Development Biweekly call. This is October 28th. My name is David Warner, and I will be your host for today. An overview of our agenda, we're going to cover a magnitude of initiatives for PnP today. We're going to cover the latest on all of our programs and initiatives. Then we're going to have our optional picture time, and then we're going to have our rock stars of the day in the demo and presentations, Nick, Albert, and Natalie. We're going to have a combination of configuration as code for Microsoft 365 with Microsoft 365 DSC. Appy is going to cover automatically recognizing your team champions with CLI for Microsoft 365. And then Natalie and Martin are going to cover updates on the independent publisher connectors and see a demo on Care Quality Commission's connector. So it's going to be very, very cool. Let's begin covering ways that you can participate in the community. We would love to see you demo a solution or technical pattern. You can always get on these calls and provide that demo. You can fill out a form if you'd like. You request a demo spot as you see there. You can contribute on GitHub. We're going to cover a number of initiatives and opportunities in which you can do that, and we'd like to hear feedback as well. So whether it's positive or constructive in ways that you'd like to see improvements made, we would love to hear it all. We just would love to make sure that you keep it positive. We are a positive and inclusive community. Again, request a demo spot on the call there at that link, and you can access that in the chat. Now, our Pajo links, as Patrick calls them, let's take them step by step. We have our developer and community videos. These are videos that are going to provide you access to a number of learning opportunities. Those will include instructional videos from Microsoft, from the community. They will include the recordings of these calls, the platform calls, and the SPFX calls. And they're all available on demand through YouTube. You can get to them through those two URLs at the bottom. We also have our open source opportunities, which include things like PnP, SharePoint, Microsoft Graph. These are all open source opportunities that are owned and governed by Microsoft. And so we would like you to be able to take advantage of those. We have our sample galleries. These sample galleries are loaded by the community and contributed by and managed by. They're an opportunity for you to take advantage of samples that are available to you to start learning, maybe improve and contribute back, or maybe start using in your tenant. But they cover a wide spectrum of technologies, team samples, SPFX web parts, Power Platform, extensions, list formatting, and more. Do you need to remember all these URLs? Not at all. aka.ms/m365pnp is your one-stop shop to take advantage of accessing all of these opportunities and resources. So go there, aka.ms/m365pnp. One of the newest initiatives, or excuse me, the newest releases, I should say, is the SharePoint Framework 1.13. This is now generally available, so it is available for you to install and begin developing against. It is no longer in preview. Some very cool things like the Viva Connections dashboard and adaptive card extensions are available. So take advantage of that, get involved, and start creating some really, really cool things. Now, the next newest initiative available to everyone in the community is script samples. This is managed by Paul Bullock, and this is a really exciting opportunity because it covers a wide spectrum of useful tools, from PowerShell scripts to CLI for Microsoft 365, SPO management, Shul tooling, and more. This is kind of like a grab bag for very cool tools. We want to thank everyone for the contributions. 5 new samples plus 7 updated samples. A number of names there, Valeris, Adam, Rodrigo, Mark Anderson, Russell, excellent work. Keep up the great work. You can access it by going to ak.ms/script samples. And again, reach out if you have any questions, working with Paul to create a sharing is caring on this as well. So look for some opportunities to get more involved, and we'll assist you with that. As we look to get more involved and we're winding down October, there is still time for Hacktoberfest. This is an event that is actually industry-wide, and it promotes getting involved and submitting new pull requests and contributions. And so you submit 4 pull requests over the course of the month. The first 55,000 will receive a shirt. There's good first issues and help wanted in a number of the PnP GitHub repos, specifically things like community docs, CLI for Microsoft 365. And we are going to have our own badge opportunity here as well. And there is no limit on that. So if you opt in for the PnP recognition program, you're going to receive a PnP Hacktoberfest badge. Now, how do you get involved? You might say, well, the Sharing is Caring initiative is here to provide you hands-on guidance to get involved in the community. Now, whether that means presenting on a call and getting some tips and tricks on how to be a better presenter and be comfortable. It might be something that's foreign to you or new to you and a little nerve-wracking, or you might want to contribute by submitting your samples to a number of these open source initiatives. You can do that and learn how to in these sessions. They're live, hands-on, safe space opportunities to ask questions. We don't record the sessions at all, and we will walk you through. We had our first Power Platform samples, first-time contributor yesterday, showed some really cool things. We've got 2 more scheduled for that over the next couple months. So please come join in on these sessions. They're not recorded, safe space, and fantastic opportunities to get involved. We have our ever popular AMAs as well. CLI for Microsoft 365 coming up on November 9th, and PnP JS coming up on November 16th. So get signed up for those in any of the sessions, and we will ensure that you are able to contribute. So thank you again. Now, we also want to celebrate your contributions, and we're going to be doing that with the PnP Recognition Program. This is powered by Credly, the same Credly that manages the certification badges for Microsoft. And as you can see, we've got our Hacktoberfest badge showing off there. So anyone who does a contribution during the month of October, and there is still time, you will earn this once only available 2021 Hacktoberfest badge from Microsoft Patterns and Practices. So exciting to start sending that out. Be on the lookout for that. If you've already opted in, then you don't need to re-opt in. We'll map your contributions to your opt-in that you already did, and you'll be good to go. It's open to everyone. There's no cost. We cover the cost for Credly, and we invite you. You can share them on LinkedIn and do even more with Twitter and associate them to your LinkedIn profile so that you can be formally and officially recognized. All right, next Tuesday, we have our platform call. Now, we invited Satya Nadella to come be our presenter for this day, and he was so gracious. He said, you know what, why don't I actually do my Microsoft Ignite keynote at that time, and I'll be your presenter. I don't know if exactly that's how it went, but at any rate, he is going to be presenting at this exact same time, his keynote for Microsoft Ignite. So we're inviting everyone to join on the platform call, 2nd of November, 8 a.m. Pacific time. That hasn't changed, and we'll form a watch party for the keynote. So what does that mean? It means that we'll all individually watch the stream of his keynote on our machine, on our own devices, and then we'll collaborate on this call about what we like, we see, what is going to be exciting around the announcements. We've done this before for a variety of other Learn Together events, and it's been a really fun time to collaborate together as a community. So you'll still join the same call, nothing changes there. And then we'll collaborate, and you'll watch the stream of the keynote on your own device. All right, so we'll see everybody there. Up next is the PnP.NET libraries, and we'll invite Bert.
Thank you, David. PnP.NET, what happened? Let's first start with PnP Framework. For that one, there is not that much that happened over the last weeks, but there are actually more than 10 pending PRs that we have to merge and process. So for the folks that submitted those PRs, great, thank you for doing that. I'll definitely make work of it in the coming days to get them processed, so it will happen soon. Why wasn't there much activity in PnP Framework? Because more time was spent on PnP Core SDK. PnP Core SDK is our brand new library for .NET developers, which unites SharePoint REST, Graph, and some CSM all together in a model that kind of is API agnostic. And for that one, there is a ton of good things coming. First of all, Sergey Sergeyev, if I pronounce it correctly, is adding ALM support. So there will be a full ALM module enabling you to install packages, upgrade packages, do everything that you can do from the admin center directly using APIs. So great thing coming up. We're finalizing the admin library, so those ALM features will be in the admin library, by the way. So that admin library will be finalized. There's features like enumerating site collections, creating site collections, configuring site admins, and much more. And then there is a transformation framework that Paolo demoed about 2 weeks ago, I think, or 4 weeks ago, I don't know anymore, but a while ago, which we are also wrapping up. So a ton of activity there. Planned to have like a next major version of both libraries in winter time, in a couple of 1 month, 1.5 months, more or less. And I think that sums it up, David. Back to you.
Awesome, thank you, Bert. Let's move into yoteams, and we'll invite Appy to the stage to walk us through the updates there.
Yeah, so we actually did our release today. We released 3.4.0, and we had some minor improvements. We have a improved debug mode with Webpack server, making it a bit more quicker. So really good performance improvement there. We migrated to the bot framework 4.14 or later, we improved some things there. We added categories for questions when scaffolding, so it's a bit clearer where you actually are providing answers for. And we did a preview, or actually a first release of our docs. So we now have a website where all our documentation, which was in GitHub, now actually moved to GitHub Pages, making it more discoverable for you all to make sure that, well, you actually see what we can all achieve with YoTeams. We are looking at improving there as well. So if you find any typo, bug, just make sure to raise it on GitHub. And if it's a typo, it's a really easy way to get your first batch. So hint, hint. We also are scaping our roadmap a little bit more. We are looking at the new bot templates, the new bot template or improved bot templates to get them in there. We are looking into Azure AD app creation through the N365 CLI that we already have. So we want to make sure that we partner with them so that you actually can do everything from your scaffolding experience. We are looking at HTTPS support for a local service. And we also did a release of the yoteams-build-core, which actually improved that Webpack dev server with some improvements there. So going strong and moving on.
Awesome, thanks, Abby. Some very exciting stuff around YoTeams, so definitely get involved there if you are doing Teams development. Moving into Microsoft Graph Toolkit, we will ask Seb Levert to take the stage.
Awesome. Well, what is the Graph Toolkit? Graph Toolkit is a set of components that are data bound to areas of Microsoft Graph. So you can build amazing UIs based out of our web components library. What are we working on right now? We're aligning the toolkit with the Fluent UI web components v3. So you're going to see that. You can see a little bit of a preview on that if you're using our next packages. If you do @next.fluent UI, you can already have a sneak peek of what we're working on. We're also working on building an MGT picker component. That picker will be more of a generic picker that you can use to build any type of picking experiences around graph data. And we're also fixing a couple of small bugs around, so you can definitely go and help us. And how can you help us? You can help us by fixing or identifying bugs. You can go on akms/mgt. You're going to automatically land on our GitHub repo where you can create new issues. You can even help us with identifying the good first issue if you want to go and get your hands dirty a little bit and help MGT. And we're also looking for specific feedback. We have two components right now where you can see 2 PRs and 1 issue around our MGT search component and our MGT picker component. So if you have any thoughts, any use cases you'd like to share with us, you're more than welcome to go in and share your thoughts on our GitHub repo. Up to you, David.
Awesome. Thank you, Seb. Excellent work there. Super, super exciting stuff. Moving into the Microsoft Teams samples. Well, there's no new team samples to share this week, but your sample can be there. So go check out aka.ms/teams-samples. And if you have an idea, there's a wish list. The link is in the chat. You can also get to it at aka.ms/teams-sample-wish list. That will take you to the repo where you can submit an issue and provide a wish list idea and get involved with others in the community to start building that together. So definitely take advantage of that. Very open to contributions for team samples, and we'd love to see them. Keep up the amazing work. Next up is the Power Platform samples, and we'll invite April to walk us through that.
Thanks, David. Yeah, so we actually have one new sample for the Power Platform repo here. We have a great COVID vaccine survey Power App Canvas app template that Siddharth put down in there. This is one that he shared in the Power Users community, and he graciously shared in our PnP repo here. Really great example of how to create not only a nice looking Canvas application, but how to integrate graphing and all kinds of great things that we can learn from this sample. So definitely encourage you to share your samples. We had a great sharing is caring session last night on how to get started sharing samples on here. We'll be having more of those in the future too, so definitely check that out. Back to you, David.
Awesome. Thank you, April. And yeah, those new sharing is caring sessions are super cool. We have some wow factor there, so definitely join those. All right, time for some optional picture time. We'll let Vesa take over the screen and capture all of our awesome smiling faces.
One second. I will find the right screen. Need is that screen. And I need to find Teams. We'll get there. And I will move that there. We are already recording the screen. So 50 spots. The first 50 who enable the video will get in the recording. I can say a ghost on the front row. 2 of them. Wow. Let's wait. And Chris arrived as well. We're starting to hit on the limit, I guess. Oh, still for more. There's Mark. Cool. There's a lot of familiar community faces as well.
The ghosts are formalizing like they're like they're beaming in.
Okay, so let's do some hand waving. So thank you everybody for joining once again. We'll generate a GIF animation out of this. Really awesome to see the actual real faces behind of the names. This is really, really good feature. We just need to start introducing new scenes definitely in here. But thanks to everybody. We'll generate a GIF animation from this. Thank you. And Chris, behave on the front row. We can see you. Thank you. Cool. Let's go back on the slides and generate. And we will share the GIF animation, by the way, in the blog post where we have the recording. So that's always available as part of the blog post summary.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. All right. Let's get to the rock stars of the day. Nick is going to kick us off with configuration as code for Microsoft 365 with Microsoft 365 DSC. Nick, you've got our attention.
Thank you, folks. Let me quickly share my deck. All right, super excited to be here and get a chance to present the amazing work our team's been doing around Microsoft 365 desired state configuration. So quick intro, right? And by the way, I do have PowerPoint animation listed on my LinkedIn profile as a skill. Open source, it's hosted on GitHub. If you go to github.com/Microsoft 365 DSC, DSC stands for desired state configuration, which is something that is part of PowerShell since PowerShell version 4, which was released back in 2015. And essentially what it allows you to do is represent your entire tenant's configuration as code, to be able to enable DevOps scenarios, be able to do some control, automate change management processes as well. Right, the module has been available, now supports PowerShell 5.1 and above. So you can use PowerShell 7. This is something we introduced recently, so we have support for that. So if you want to run the tool inside of a Windows container, a Nano server, or a Core server, you can do it. The tool leverages the PowerShell Draft SDK under the cover, as well as other modules, such as we're using the PnP PowerShell for everything that's SharePoint related. We're using the Exchange Online Management shell under the cover. So there's a couple of dependencies that we are leveraging. And on top of this, the module is available. The way we're distributing it is through the PowerShell gallery. So within a single command, you can run install module Microsoft 365 DSC, and that will go and that will download all the components of the module, including all the dependencies, all the Microsoft Draft modules that you need, all the other workloads, PowerShell modules as well. Okay. So what is desired state configuration? As I mentioned, it's been released around 2014. I think it's more around 2015. But essentially what it allows you to do is represent your configuration as a definition in a certain way, right? So for example, if you want to say, all right, I want to create a new Teams calling policy that will prevent anonymous users from starting a meeting. Well, that will translate to something like this here, where you actually, and it looks very familiar, it looks almost like JSON format to some users, right? But this is the DSC format that PowerShell desired state configuration out of the box uses. And essentially what we do is we have a Teams meeting policy block, and in there we define what properties and how we want to have them configured. So when you run this, it will go and it will analyze your tenant, check to see, all right, is there a Teams meeting policy named demo meeting policy that already exists? If there is none, it will go and it will create it. If there is one, it will go and check to make sure that all the settings are configured in that desired state, as mentioned by the configuration. And if it doesn't, then it will go and it will automatically update those parameters. You can also control components that should not be in your tenant, right? So for example, if you want to make sure that you never have a Teams meeting policy named demo meeting policy, you can specify that you want it to be ensure absent, which will make sure that it will never get deployed to your environment. Okay. So what does Microsoft 365 DSC allow you to do? Well, we focus around 6 main pillars. The first one is the automation piece. That one's fairly easy, right? So it allows you to write a definition for your tenant for all workloads within a single configuration. So let's take an example here. So my first demo here, what I'm defining is I'm defining an Azure AD application
that is going to be called Nick Demo App that will define two permissions. User.read, which is a Microsoft Graph delegated permissions. And the second one is going to be channel.create, which is an app-only Microsoft Graph permission. Second thing I'm defining is a custom Teams calling policy that will be named Nick calling policy with all those settings in. And so what I'll do is I'll start the process. I'm just going to go and launch my demo 1. That's going to take a few minutes to run. In the meantime, what I want to do is I quickly want to do an overview of the environment, right? I'm a big believer in doing demos without smoke and mirrors, so I've got nothing up my sleeves. This is my demo environment right now. You can see I only have one Azure AD app registration. If you go to calling policies, I'm just going to refresh this here real quick. You can see that I don't have the Nick demo calling policy. All right, so this is currently my PowerShell script running that will go and create those components. If you want to get more information as to what resources are supported by Microsoft 365 DSC, you can go to the GitHub repo. Under the wiki section, we have resources list and example. And in there, we have a full list of all the components that we support. Okay. So there's about 140 different macro components last time I checked. We support SharePoint, we have Teams support, we have security and compliance, Intune, OneDrive, Planner, O365, the licensing part, Exchange Online, Azure AD. Now, one of the challenges that we have, right, is always how do we keep up with the constant changes in Microsoft 365? And 2 weeks ago, was it 2 weeks already? But anyway, we had the global hackathon in Microsoft. And our amazing team of MVPs and Microsoft engineers worked on a dynamic resource generator. What that allows us to do moving forward is that we can actually leverage the Microsoft Graph Open API definition and automatically wrap those endpoints into DSC resources. Right? So instead of us always trying to play catch up and create new resources as new features become available, the discussion is now shift to if it's on the graph, we'll have DSC support for it, right? To a certain extent, there's a caveat there, right? Like we don't want to play in what we call the data plane, right? We don't want to go and have DSC maintain like SharePoint lists, for example. It's mostly focused on configuration, but you get the point. And then if you go in and, for example, go to Azure AD from that list, you're going to see the list of all the properties that we have, along with a description of what they're for. And we also provide information about, all right, so what permissions do you need to be able to go and export those or automate the deployment? Some examples. So all the documentation is on there. We also have an amazing team of MVPs from the community that are working on revamping our entire documentation, creating GitHub pages. So that should be released within the next few weeks. So let's have a look. This is still running, but if I go and refresh this here, should be done anytime now. Any questions in the meantime while this is running? I see one. Can we do an export of configuration? Absolutely. Absolutely, and this is one of the pillars that I'm going to be talking about in just a few seconds. So this idea of being able to do a snapshot of your current configuration. So PowerShell doesn't seem to be eager to run today. In the meantime, any other questions? Sorry, I just want to make sure we actually get this here. Do you see how they set up the pre-configured? There is a part of it that's being done with the pre-configured demos, right? Most of it is done through PowerShell scripts, so they're not directly leveraging PowerShell desired state configuration. Last time I checked, right? So, but that might have changed. Also, let's actually move on to the next thing while this is still running. One other thing that we allow you to do is take a snapshot of your configuration, right, as it was just mentioned. And how you can do it is the moment you go in and install your PowerShell module, the Microsoft 365 desired state configuration, you have access to a command called export M365 desired state configuration. Right? And with that, we provide a graphical user interface that our colleague Sebastian Levaya, who you've just heard from, built, which allows you to go and pick and choose the components you want to go and export from your configuration. So that will actually launch the export tool, which is listing all the resources that we have. From here, you can go in, you can say, all right, you know what, I want to unselect them all, and I want to be very picky about the ones I want. I want to grab the Azure AD application. I want to go and grab the Exchange Online organization settings, right? So you pick and choose, you essentially build your shopping cart. And then when you click on generate, what it's going to tell you is going to give you the equivalent command that you would have to run to be able to export that configuration. So in my case, you see that every component I selected are listed here. copy that to the clipboard, run it in your PowerShell console, and that will go and automatically export the configuration into a DSC file. So you don't have to go and write it from scratch. You can go and start with an existing tenant, take a snapshot of those configs, and then tweak it. Or also, the other thing that we support is the ability to go and clone configurations. Right? A lot of customers I'm talking to, what they're saying is, look, we want to have a dev tenant, right, that is as close as possible to production. So what they're doing is they're taking a snapshot of the configuration from prod, extracting that, taking that file, and applying it onto a dev tenant, effectively cloning the configuration across 2 tenants. Okay. Where are we at? PowerShell. All right, so PowerShell is done. So if I go back here, refresh that, I can see my Nick demo app has been created. Let's have a look here. Take a look at the API permissions. We were supposed to have 2 of them. Perfect. Channel, create, application, user, read, delegated. So that one is created. Second one was the Teams calling policy. Let's see if that worked. Let's refresh. Actually, sorry about this. So I should now see my policy in there. Now, because we're leveraging desired state configuration under the cover, not only do we allow you to go and automate the deployment, so this is my policy, by the way, right? But desired state does 2 things. It allows you to bring an environment in the desired state, but it also ensures that that environment stays in the desired state. So what it does, it has a job that we'll call it continuous monitoring for the purpose of this, but it's actually leveraging something called a local configuration manager. And that will do frequent checks. So it will go and analyze your tenant to make sure it is still in the desired state. So let's create a drift. Okay, so I defined that this is the settings I want. I'm going to save this. So we all agree that I'm now creating, so there's a discrepancy between the current configuration and the desired configuration. So every 20 or 15 minutes by default, DSC is going to go in and behind the scene is going to run a method called test DSC configuration. Okay. So that, what it will do is it will wake up the engine, it will go and analyze the tenant, and it will report on any discrepancies that it detected. So let me just go and quickly run this. Perfect. So again, it's going to take a few minutes, but what it's doing now is connecting to my remote tenant, getting information about what the current state is and comparing it with what the desired state should be based on the configuration I sent, and is going to report on the discrepancies. Now, I can do many things, right? With that, by default, the DSC engine is configured so that it will do what we call apply and monitor. So if it detects a configuration drift here, the only thing it will do is log an event in Event Viewer to let me know it detected a drift. But you can also configure it for apply and autocorrect. So apply and autocorrect, the name says it. What it will do is it will go and if it detects a drift, it will automatically fix the drift. So reapply the desired configuration effectively. Now, the beauty about M365 DSC is that you can slice and dice it, right? You can say, you know what, SharePoint, like the SharePoint teams, right, which is one of the things we support. If there's a drift, well, report it, right? I want to be in control. I want to be aware that there's a drift, but don't go crazy and try to go and fix it. However, security and compliance, that is mission critical. So if you detect a drift in there, automatically fix it and send me an email to let me know that you've detected and fixed the drift. Right, so you can pick and choose what components get what treatment, essentially. 15 minutes is the minimum. You can go up to once every 30 days as well. I'll be very honest, every 15 minutes is a bit overkill. Normally what I recommend customers is to go and do it twice a day. So every 12 hours, right, like 6 a.m., 6 p.m. Again, sorry about this, it's going to take a few minutes to complete. Let's quickly go back to the slide deck. So this is the export and synchronize, right? So as I mentioned, the idea is that you can just take a snapshot out of one tenant and then reapply it over the other. Let's talk about the assessment piece. So that there are different assessments that we support as part of the Microsoft 365 DSC assessment piece. Steve, I see your question about sending an email. If you're using something like Azure DevOps, to have schedule release pipeline that will do the check. If it detects a drift, it can send an email with all the information pertaining to the drift. Okay. The assessment piece. Okay, so essentially there are different types of assessments we can do. We can compare the configuration of 2 tenants. So the idea is that you have tenant A, tenant B. So let's say you're doing a merger, right? You want to figure out, all right, so what's different between the two tenants? Do an export of both, and then through the assessment engine that we provide, what we will do is we will analyze both config, figure out what the drifts are, the discrepancies between the two, and we'll generate what we call a delta report. Okay, the delta report will look something like this here, right? So we will tell you, right, so in the source, you have this setting here set to 3, this setting is set to 99 in the destination. Let me just do a quick live demo of this. The command that we have, by the way, is super easy. It's one command called new M365. Oh, let me just remove that here. So it's new M365 DSC Delta report. You pass in the source PS1. So in my case, it's going to be my prod environment. My destination is going to be my dev. And where do you want to store the resulting HTML? So let me do this here. Let's do number 3. It's actually demo 4. And then what it will do is it will do 2 things. So under the cover, we have a tool called DSC parser. So we'll take both configurations and it will convert them into PowerShell objects. And then what you can do with this is you can actually run the compare and it will generate the HTML report out of this. Okay. Email still yesterday, yeah. You can actually, you know what, if you want, you can plug it to a webhook, right? So if you detect a drift, you can actually just have a notification sent to a certain webhook that will automatically, I don't know, open a support ticket in your system or whatever, right? You decide how you want to treat that. Sorry, I'm bouncing back and forth between things, right? So we'll let the assessment run. In the meantime, this is the test result. So remember, I was actually running a test and it's coming back and it's saying you have a discrepancy. The my calling policy here is not in the desired state. We know we created that drift, right? Out of the box, this is what PowerShell desired state configuration would tell you. Now with Microsoft 365 DSC, we provide you with more insights as to what went wrong. So not only are we telling you that the macro component is the team's calling policy, but we're also telling you that the allow delegation is the problem. Its current value is set to false and it should have been set to true, right? And here's a list of all the desired values, okay? So you can pinpoint exactly where the issue is. Now, the one thing we don't let you figure out is exactly at what time, right? So this is the time at which the drift was detected, 10:31. But because I'm running it every 15 minutes, maybe it happened at 10:20. The other thing we're looking at doing is do cross-reference with the audit log. So not only are you able to, and I don't want to call this the finger pointing feature, but right, I mean, there's a drift that got created at 10:20 and Bob is the one that made the change, for example, right? So be able to go and follow up, pick up the phone and ask Bob what happened there, right? Like, why is there a drift? So that's the test piece. And then this is the report. Sorry about this. Okay, so the report is still being generated. The drift configuration, we've talked about this, right? This idea of being able to do continuous monitoring. And then the last piece is something I call, I keep joking that it's called the putting lipstick on a pig feature, but essentially all it does is it takes your configuration and it will convert it into either an HTML or an Excel report. So this is what the report will look like if you were to export it to Excel. Excel makes a little more sense than HTML in my opinion, because then you can do fancy pie charts if you want to. You can actually do filtering, you can do sorting and so on, but this is what it will give you. So we'll take that PowerShell configuration and automatically generate an Excel out of this. Where are we at? Sorry, I just want to make sure that the last demo completes. I know I'm probably running out of time. So right now what it's doing is scanning my production environment. It figured out that I have 383 components that were defined. It's going to do the same thing with the dev one, and then figure out what the discrepancies are and hopefully generate my HTML report. So let's go to questions. What about changing desired state to match the current? Update to DSC to match rather than ongoing changes. Jim, can you just elaborate a bit more on this, if you don't mind? I'm just trying to make sense of your question. So this is the report here. You can see that in my source, there's an exchange malware filter policy missing that exists in dev, but not in prod. The opposite also, and then what values are different between the two. Yeah, if you can just add more details, sorry, in the chat. The other thing as well that I want you to understand is a lot of customers, what they're doing is they just want to be in control, right? They don't want to go and automate the entire change process, but they want to just be able to report on configuration drift. And the interesting scenario for those customers is they're using the tool to get a full snapshot of everything. So essentially, they're asking the question to the tenant, tell me how you're currently configured. They take that configuration and they push it right back on the tenant and say, by the way, your current configuration has now become your desired configuration. And from now on, any drift, you need to report back. Right? So you're not making any changes. You're taking a snapshot and setting that as the active config. And anything that changes in what's defined there, you get control over. You get a report, you get an email, you get a text notification, however you want to do it. Okay, okay, that's it. So what about changing the desired state to match the current? Well, okay, so that answered your question. Okay, perfect, cool. I think I'm out of time. So any questions I missed? Sorry about that.
Yeah, we can have you cover the questions in the chat there, Nick. They can feel free to keep asking everybody. You've blown everyone's mind here. Just amazing comments in the chat. So super amazing stuff. Thank you.
Good.
All right.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks, Nick. Awesome. Next up, automatically recognizing your team champions with CLI from Microsoft 365. Albert John Schott, otherwise known as Appy, take it away.
So there we go. Let me share my screen and we should all be good. Now, I didn't prep any slides. I just wanted to walk you through some demos. So it's going to be demo heavy, and let's see if I can wrap it up in like 10 minutes so we at least have some time for the third session as well. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago that my friend Tommy actually did a session on showing the dashboard who was active in Microsoft Teams. And it all started with us discussing, okay, you have people working in teams, and if they are working in teams, is there a way to actually see what they are doing and adding points to that? So give them, let's say, an activity bonus or things they're doing. Now, if you would go to Teams, what you typically do on Teams is you create files or you have chat messages, you're chatting, having meetings, stuff like that. Now, envision a way where you could actually hand out points or identify who is active. Now, with that, let's say, challenge, I started looking at CLI to see what we could do with the CLI. And it turns out there are already quite a few things in the CLI that you can either abuse or actually use to generate reports like that. Now, out of the box in your tenant, there are some reports available for you that you can use to get some insights into your activity. Now, you can actually read those reports using the CLI. So if you install the CLI, let me quickly show you. If you go to pnp.github.io/CLI Microsoft 365, you actually get an overview of all the things you can do. I already installed everything, not going to spend time on that. But if you have the CLI installed and you are logged in, you can actually talk to your tenant. And what I can do is I can say M365 SharePoint Online report, and I'm going to say activity, that's always hard, user detail. You have to specify a period, and then I can say, okay, give me the last 7 days of things that are happening on my tenant around SharePoint Online. So what I get is I get an overview, and as you can see, I get 2 entities because I have 2 demo accounts in my environment, and I can see some details like last activity date. I can see synced files, shared internally files. I can do things like external file count. And I have pretty much the same account if I want to do things around Teams. So I can do the Teams report, user activity, user details. Sorry, I have to specify a period as well. So I'm going to do minus D7 instead of an ampersand. That's better. And that would return a somewhat similar JSON structure with only different properties. So instead of files, I now get private chat messages, Teams chat messages. So that's all stuff that I already get out of the box. Now imagine that I have a report like this and I wanted to do anything with it. So I want to actually report based on this information. Now what you can do with the CLI is you can actually send adaptive cards. And when you want to send adaptive cards, you need to design an adaptive card. So you do need to do some things with an adaptive card designer. But once you have that in place, you can actually send those adaptive cards to Teams. And in order to send them to Teams, you need a webhook. I'm going to show you in a second. But there is this really nice write-up by Louise. She did a how to send adaptive cards with CLI for Microsoft 365, which is basically all the things that we need. It's creating a webhook, making sure that we have some adaptive card JSON that we can actually send, add some data to that adaptive card, and then send it to your teams. Now, if I go to the designer, there is this really cool website where you have a designer that you can use to design your adaptive card, making sure that it looks pretty. There are some samples out there that you can abuse as well. Now, in my case, I just went with a really simple setup, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to get some details. So I wanted to get that report that we just saw. I wanted to map that to a specific adaptive card. And then I wanted to make sure that I can actually send it. Now, what I did is I'm going to paste it in here as well. So the first thing that I'll need is I'll need a webhook URL. I already created that. So for the sake of time, I'm gonna skip that. Then what I needed to do is I'll need to get that report, and actually I need to do something with that report. I wanted to, with that report, as you can imagine, here we go, let me get the Teams one. With that report, I want to do something with some of the properties. So let's say I want to get the private chat message count and use that as the most used property. So I'll need to sort this result set, and I want to sort that on either the Teams chat message count or something else. So it depends on what you want to sort on, but if you would want to sort in Teams on the Teams chat message count, it will look like this. I'm going to open my code. It's going to be easier. Let me get this out of the way. So what I'll need to do is I'll need to get that Teams report user activity details, need to specify a period. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in a query where I'm going to say, okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to sort by the Teams chat message count, and then I'm going to reverse it so that I at least get the most sent, or the user that sent the most Teams chat messages. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the top 3 of that, and I'm going to do the user principal name, and I'm going to convert that from JSON. Then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use that CLI command called M365 adaptive card send. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send I'm going to send that to a URL, a webhook URL, and I'm actually going to send that card. Now, if I would send this is going to be the top 3 SharePoint based on file interactions. Now, I'm not sure if I did a lot of things on my tenant, but what I can do, oops, there is a typo in there as well. Let me get what the typo is. It's the convert from JSON. There should be a space in there, or there should be an enter from there. Ooh, this should be better. Let me do this. Now, what this will do is it will retrieve the data, and then it will send it. There is a question: what permissions are needed to get this report data? It's using the out-of-the-box report data that is available. So you'll need, I think, to be a SharePoint administrator if you're getting the SharePoint reports. If you do the Teams reports, you need to be a Teams administrator. If you're a global admin, you can see anything. By default, currently, it will filter out the user display or the UPNs. So there is this checkbox to anonymize the reports. If you want to use this approach, you want to get identifiable data, you'll need to actually disable that. Otherwise, it won't show. But with this, what we now did is, okay, we sent the SharePoint weekly social champions, meaning that I at least get some insights. Now, what you can also do, and that's a bit more of a complex one, you could actually go through all the data in a team and then use a custom scoring model. So it's pretty much the same approach. We're gonna rank people in a team for what they're doing. Now, I'm gonna ignore this one. So what I do is I get all my teams, get some details. Then for each team, I'm gonna process that team, and I'm gonna say, okay, I need all the team details, and I'll need wrong one. I'll need this one. So what I need to do is I'll need to get a specific team. I'm not gonna process all teams. I want to get one specific team. Then I'm gonna say, okay, how long am I going to look back? Do I need to get champions for the last year or for the last 50 days or the last 7 days? So you can run this report periodically. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get all the channels for that specific team. Then for each channel, I'm going to get all the messages, because you need all messages to actually get details from. And then that's where it gets interesting. If you retrieve all the messages, you also need to get some message details. I'm going to show you later. But the first thing that we're going to do is for each message, I'm going to say, okay, if the message was created by a user instead of a chatbot or a backend service, then I'm going to do something. So if I do have a user ID, which is is only filled if you're actually a real user who logged in and did something, then I'm going to do something. So I'm going to set the type to post. I'm going to say, okay, there were details with the reaction type, what was the user that did something, and I'm going to specify whether there was a subject, because I think any post in a Teams channel should have a subject. Then for each reaction, which is all the likes and comments, I'm going to add that to my results as well. Then finally, I'm going to get all the replies for each message, and I'm going to add those as well, because a reply should count as well. Then running that, you will have all messages, all replies, all likes and comments, and all likes on all comments that you would have. Now, with that data, you can then say, oh, let me get some user details. And then I'm going to say, I'm going to create my own scoring model. And this scoring model is slightly, let's say, slightly simplistic. We're only going to say we are getting, or we counting, or we are valuing your post. Now, you would say, okay, a post counts for 2 points, a subject counts for an additional point, your reply counts for an additional count, your reaction only counts for a half a point. So it's not something that you count or score really high, but with that, what you can then do is, if you would run this will actually post somewhat a similar result, and it will tell me, okay, who are the most active users in this specific team. Now, Steve, you're totally right. If you want to run this against all teams in your environment, then it could potentially become fairly slow. So what you could do is you could get this information, and you could add some additional logic. You could see if a team has any activity in the last week, and if not process it. If it does have activity, then you can get some details. Now, running this, it's already done, means that I can now see, oh, apparently I and someone else did something in this specific team. I sent some messages and I actually replied that. Now, this is all running from my local machine. It's all running in my PowerShell window, or my terminal, actually. You could also run this in a logic app. So you could have a logic app, and quickly show you that here. You could have a logic app where you could create a container, so an Azure container. Within the Azure container, you can get the CLI running. There is a Docker container available for the CLI. You would need to set up a managed identity, but given time, no time for that. And that would be my demo. Concluded results. Imagine this kind of thing in M language and Power BI. Yeah, would really cool to get this data to, let's say, Teams Dataverse and query Power BI against that. Definitely a good scenario.
Awesome. Thank you, Appy. This is really, really cool stuff. Is there anything the CLI cannot do? Eventually, we're going to be applying for jobs, and they're going to say, no, thanks. We've got the CLI for Microsoft 365.
We can do anything. If you want to help out, there are a lot of good first issues to see, and get your badge for that as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. Awesome. All right, let's move on to Natalie Piankowska and Martin Lisberl on updates on the Independent Publisher Connectors and Care Quality Commissions Connector demo. Natalie, take it away.
Ooh, thank you. Hi, everyone. Good to be back. So in terms of the connectors that we have in production today, we have 29, up 13 from in the past month, which is pretty incredible. So again, independent publisher connectors are Power Platform connectors submitted by anyone, whether you're an MVP. We've gotten some submissions from students. It could really be anyone who comes on and builds a custom connector and deploys it. So it's pretty incredible. And out of these 29 connectors in production, we have 19 incredible independent publishers, and Martin is definitely one of them. 3 of these connectors have been updated so far, and I know that some of the publishers have said they'll be updating them in the next couple of months. It's awesome to see that. And 2 of these connectors have been co-authored, which means 2 or more people have built one connector together. So we love to see that collaboration. We also have 26 connectors in the certification pipeline. So they're going through the pipeline at different various stages of certification. And wanted to add that David and I have been working on the past couple of weeks on a new Credly badge. So we're really, really excited to release that very soon and to award our independent publishers as well as project coordinators. We'll have 2 of those badges. Really excited for that. And just wanted to, of course, call out all of our outstanding publishers for publishing fantastic connectors that people are using. There's been some really cool ones that we'll see on the next slide. And of course, always want to call out Troy Taylor for going above and beyond and submitting 19 connectors. So of course, not all of them have been published in production, but we can really say that Troy is one of the experts here now after building so many. So it's super incredible. And Daniel, of course, has submitted 6 connectors and Ahmad has submitted 5. So it's pretty awesome to have all that. So if we go to the next slide, you can just see some of the names of the connectors here. So, anything from AccuWeather to Spotify. We have a couple of weather ones, which is interesting. We have weather forecast as well. And we have Martin's, the CQC, which he'll be giving a demo on today in the UK government bank holidays, as well as a couple that have to do with science and the space. We see that there's EONET by NASA that was published this month. There's a SpaceX connector as well, which is super awesome. And one notable one that I want to call out that's in the certification pipeline is the Microsoft MVP connector. So this is, of course, only going to be available if you're an MVP so that you can sign in, but it will allow you to do a lot in terms of like tracking your contributions and all that good stuff. So then that was built by Ahmad. So it's awesome to see that. We also have a Coinbase connector that's in the pipeline. So very wide variety of services that people are building connectors to. Martin is back with us again. He's a solutions architect at Dynamity. And today he'll be showing a cool demo on the Care Quality Commissions connector. Martin, take it away.
For people who don't know, the CQC in England is the Care Quality Commission. Now, this is a government organisation that is tasked with doing quality reviews on services such as doctors, dentists, and rest homes, and it rates those organisations. It does this independently, so you can get a sort of fair comparison between them all. Now, their front end, if we just nip into their webpage, is quite daunting. There's a lot of endpoints. This is just to get a list of locations that they're reviewing at the moment, and there's a huge list of potential parameters here. Now, this is all meant to be done via HTTP calls normally. They do provide a small widget, so you can pull out your own locations state if you want to put it onto your homepage. They've got a couple of pages on their website where you can search according to locations. But this API is there. It's a bit overwhelming, potentially for someone who walks up to it. The purpose of the connector is to simplify it, give us an easy way into it. So what I'm going to show you today is a small free screen Power App. And we'll be using 2 of the endpoints, the location endpoint, and we'll be using the reports as well. So if we just get the browser up, quite literally, this is just taking a chunk of a postcode or a complete postcode. This is the first part of mine here in England. So we put this in. Power Apps don't have spinners like this. The idea for setting this up and displaying it on the screen, I nicked from this gentleman's blog here. I find it quite interesting. You might do if you're looking for hints on Power App stuff, but it's worth taking a look at. Now, the location list coming back normally can take around 45 to 60 seconds, unfortunately. This is why I wanted a larger spinner on the screen rather than just the 3 little dots at the top. When it comes back, we'll get the list of all the locations it finds. So if we just speed things up and we'll get the first location, these normally return a lot quicker. Now, getting that information for the location list and the location details here involve two flows in the background. One called get locations, one called get location details. Get location, fairly simple, it asks for locations and filters them against the postcode you supplied. This one, the get location details flow, it will get a location's details, which is quite more extensive than you see here on the screen. It strips it down to this subset and passes it back to the Power App. Now, a couple of things to note. Sometimes there's missing bits of information, like there's no second line to the address here. The website, Portland do have one. If we click on it, we can go to it. And you need to have your IE4 ready as well if you're going to go to some of these sites, unfortunately. Also, the table here, we have the ratings. So if we click on that, it will take us to the report for the facility as well. So here's Portland Nursing Home, which is getting a good rating on all of its services. Now, the good isn't the highest rating. We'll go back to the list, and if we drag down, I think, to surely here, this is my local doctor, Hartington Surgery. Now, if we take a look at them, much to my relief, they are outstanding in their well-led, caring and responsive attitude, which is what you want to see for your doctor. Notice the website here is missing, but if we go to take a look at their report, they have a website. This is one of the problems with CQC. The data isn't always wonderfully consistent. Step back a couple pages. This stage here, where we're looking for the locations. Here I've used the postcode. There's a huge number of other options. Now, at the moment, this initial draft or first version of the connector has everything pretty much as a text box, so you can put what you like in. Working through the various options on the various endpoints at the moment and raising queries with the CQC about some of the options there. The locations endpoint has regions. CQC on their website do not list all of the regions. I emailed and asked them, what are the regions on your endpoint? To which they replied, basically, we do not know. They do not get the regions or define them themselves. They actually fetch them from a second organization called the Office of National Statistics, from which they get postcodes. So further updating of the CQC connector is going to involve going back and forth between two different organizations instead of just the one, to fill out those gaps and produce drop-down lists where I can instead of just a text box. That is a lesson for if you go for a large connector. It may be better off just targeting one endpoint rather than trying to do it all at once. I'm just looking at it, it's coming up to on the hour. Very swiftly, one last thing. If anybody wants to look at this and play with this, it's up there. It's in a public Git repo. I'm sure we can get this address out some way, or get this code through to everyone some way if anyone actually wants it. And that pretty much wraps up what I've got to show on the CQC browser. So I'm just going to drop off.
All right, Martin, excellent. This is very, very cool. Natalie, thank you both. Let me share out and we will wrap up the call. Thank you again to all of our amazing presenters today, Nick, Appy, Natalie, and Martin. Extremely amazing stuff. Keep all of it coming. We love to see presentations and demos like this. Let's look to our recordings availability. The call will be available within 24 hours at aka.is/m365pnp/videos. You can always subscribe to get updates when they are added. You can follow on Twitter at Microsoft 365 Dev and at Microsoft 365 PnP. Our next M365 General Dev call will be 2 weeks from today, November 11th at 7 a.m. Pacific. And the next SharePoint Framework call 1 week from today, November 4th at 7 a.m. You can access all of the developer community calls via these links, the Microsoft platform call as well, aka.ms/M365 dev call. Remember, that will be a watch party for Ignite next week. And then we've got our adaptive cards, a Microsoft Identity platform, Office add-ins, Power Apps, and our 2 biweekly calls. You can access them all at aka.ms/M365PnP. Thank you again to all of our presenters and everyone in the community for joining and making a lively conversation in the chat. You're all amazing. Have a wonderful rest of the week and a good weekend.